Thursday, November 23rd, Thanksgiving. Yesterday morning, I dug out my old Houston Oilers hooded sweatshirt, a thick pair of corduroy pants, and a wool shirt that has always been too large for me to wear. The weather has turned very cold and very windy. The guy on my clock radio called it a Thanksgiving freeze. Down in the kitchen, the TV weather girl called it a fall freeze. I answered the phone on the kitchen wall and heard my grandmother's voice. Paul, you're on CNN again. You're having record cold temperatures down there. I know, Grandma. She made some more small talk with me about the cold in Florida versus the cold in Ohio. Grandpop got on the extension, and the two of them asked me about myself, about my school, about my friends. That's one thing about Grandmom and Grandpop. They couldn't care less about the Eric Fisher football dream. They never, ever mention it, and when Dad brings it up, they do their best to change the subject. Mom got up and took the phone away. She talked a little but mostly listened while Dad, Eric, and I sat and ignored each other. Then she said, Great, we'll look forward to seeing you then. Mom hung up and announced to us, Grandmom and Grandpop are stopping by on their way to Orlando. Dad asked glumly, When? A week from Sunday. For how long? An hour or two. Dad perked up. Is that all? They booked a week at Epcot. They just want to stop in to see your new house. Dad thought about this. So they can drive to Florida to see Mickey Mouse, but not to see their own grandson play football? Mom was ready for him. Well, maybe we can talk them into changing their plans. Dad managed a weak smile. Mom turned the conversation back to the unseasonably cold weather. She said, I'm going out to the storage bin today to get winter clothing for all of us. If there's anything particular you want, let me know. Dad said, Whatever you packed up in Houston, I'm sure that's okay. Mom said, Eric, you'll need to give me your key. We locked mine in the bin yesterday. Eric looked up. Oh, yeah, got it in my locker at school. What's it doing there? I need it now. That's where I keep a lot of my stuff. Okay, how can I get it? I'll bring it home today. I could see that Mom didn't like that answer, but she was stuck with it. On the way to Tangerine, she started thinking out loud. I'm sure they have some way of letting their customers get into those bins. I'm sure I'm not the first person in history to have a locked key inside. We pulled up to the school. There were no karate kickers, no gangsters. There were no human beings of any kind hanging around outside. Kids from the cars ahead of us sprinted into the building with their heads down, clutching their books to their bodies. I didn't. I stood outside the car door, unflinching like a northern kid. Mom asked, What winter clothes should I bring for you? I don't know. What do I have here? She looked me up and down. I swear, Paul, you've grown half a foot this year. You probably don't have anything that fits, including what you have on now. Thanks, Mom. You at least warm? Yeah, I'm at least that. Okay, you'd better get inside. I'll see you later. I walked into the building. In those few yards, my ears were turned red and raw by the wind. A lot of kids were absent from first period. Wimps, I figured. By second period, though, I realized that something bigger was going on. At least 10 kids were absent from science. So many kids that we had to waste our time with worksheets. I walked over to Henry D's desk and asked him, Where is everybody? They all sick? No, I reckon they're out fighting the freeze. What? What does that mean? It's a tradition in Tangerine. Kids from families that are in the citrus business or the vegetable business can stay out of school whenever there's a freeze. Their families need them to help. It's like a snow day. I don't know about that. The kids aren't playing, they're out working. I remember my daddy and my granddaddy talking about getting out of school to fight the freezes. What do you fight with? Anything you got. Most people around here are small growers. They use whatever. They haul old tires out and start a bonfire in the grove. They burn up old brush. They do anything they can to create heat and smoke. So all of these kids are out building bonfires? Some of them are. They might be out filling up the smudge pots or hauling out pipes for the water pumps. Whatever family has to fight with, that's what the kids are working on. Do you think that's what Louise and Tino are doing? Most definitely. And Victor and those guys, they're trying to save those golden dawn tangerines and the rest of the trees out there. Immediately, without a doubt, I knew what I had to do. I said, Can your brother drive us out there today? Henry looked at me uncertainly. I expect he can. What do you say we go help them fight the freeze? Henry thought it over and nodded. Yes, I suppose we should, he added. We're all war eagles. We shook on it, and I went back to my seat. The rest of the day dragged by. Henry told me some more about the freezes in Tangerine. He explained that the first night is dangerous, but the second night is the real killer. The trees are injured already. They're weak and vulnerable. Louise and his crew had probably worked all night in the groves. They would sleep during the day, and then the battle would resume at sunset, and we would be there. I called Mom at lunchtime, but she was out. I left this message. Mom, we're having a combination science meeting and sleepover party at Tino's house. I have a ride there with Henry Dilks. I hope it's okay to go because I already said I would. The good news is that you don't have to pick me up after school. Call you when I get there. Bye. After last period was over, I looked out of the second floor window. I was a little worried that Mom had gotten the message. I was a little worried that Mom had not gotten the message, or that she had gotten it but was not buying it. Anyway, when I stepped outside, Mom's car wasn't there. The car riders were once again rushing, running, panic stricken through the punishing gusts of wind. I followed Henry across the street to where Wayne was parked. Henry pulled his hood on against the stinging wind, so I did the same. We climbed into the cab, and Henry said, "We're not going home, Wayne. We're going back out to the Tomas Cruz Groves. Can you take us?" It was all the same to Wayne. He smiled. "Yeah, I'll take you. I gotta go right back to work, though. There's emergencies all over the country on account of the freeze. I don't know when I can pick y'all up." "That's all right, Wayne. We don't need to be picked up. We're gonna help them out in the groves tonight." Wayne looked at me with genuine surprise. "Is that right? You're gonna get out in that nasty cold?" Wayne wouldn't say it. He was too polite, but I knew what he was thinking. "How come you're not back at Lake Windsor Downs with the rest of them, complaining about the mosquitoes and the termites and the muck fire?" We pulled off Route 22 at the Tomas Cruz sign and bumped down the dirt road. The cattail pond now had steel gray and rust brown pipes running up from it toward the groves, like someone had connected straws together in four crooked lines. Wayne pointed at them. "Looks like they're icing down their new grove." "What's that?" "They'll pump water over the trees all night long, probably a quarter of the grove at a time." This was all new to me. I shook my head. "Why is it a good thing to do? Won't that kill the tree sooner?" Wayne answered patiently. "If you cover them with ice, their temperature will never drop below 32 degrees. 32 degrees won't kill a tree. 31 degrees will if it stays that cold long enough." "So why don't they just ice all the trees and be done with it?" "Probably because they don't have the water or the pumps or the sprinklers to do it all. It's expensive enough to do one part. Even then it might work. Even then it might not work. The ice has to be kept just like slush. If ice gets thick and hard on a tree, that thing will crack in half like a Thanksgiving wishbone." "So what if they start this slush thing and they run out of water?" "That won't happen. That there's a spring-fed lake. It'll just keep filling up. Now they might run out of diesel fuel. Water won't do you any good if you can't pump it where you want to. Look over there." Wayne pointed at something that I hadn't noticed before. On the rising ground behind the house, barely visible from the road, was a vertical orange tank 20 feet high. It looked like a giant can of frozen orange juice stuck there on its side. "That tank's full of diesel fuel. That diesel's your lifeblood tonight." We drove around the house and stopped outside the Quonset hut. Louise and his father were standing by the back door. They were both dressed in layers of old clothes, and they both had blue knit ski caps pulled down over their ears. Wayne waved to them and pulled away. Louise said, "What can I do for you guys?" I thought of Louise facing down Eric and his gang at the high school. I answered earnestly, "We want to help you fight this freeze tonight. We'll do anything we can." Louise looked at Henry, then back at me. His doubts seemed to be directed at me. So were his words. "Why do you want to do that?" I didn't know what to say. Was he looking at me as Eric Fish's brother? Was I now the enemy? Tino came out of the house, and I thought of Henry D's line. I said, "Because we're all war eagles." Luis turned to his father and said a few words in Spanish. Tomas Cruz walked up to me immediately and stretched out his hand. He said, "Thank you for your help." He shook hands with both of us and continued on into the concert hut. Louise said, "Our daddy thinks that's great, but he doesn't worry about the insurance and stuff. Do you guys have your parents' permission to do this?" We both nodded. Finally, Louise shrugged. "Okay, you're on Tino's crew. He'll show you what's up." He looked directly at me, like I was the one who was a potential lawsuit. "But you're responsible for your own health and safety, right? If you get too cold, you come into the hut here and you warm up. If you get too tired, you come in and lie down." Louise went inside, leaving us with Tino. He was dressed like I was, but his sweatshirt said Miami Dolphins. He had a walkie-talkie in one hand and a white bag from Kmart in the other. He was all business. He said, "There ain't no lying down in my crew, you got that?" "Yeah. Anybody has to do any bathroom stuff or anything like that, you do it now." I half raised my hand like I was in school. "I have to make a phone call." Tino opened the door and let us into the concert hut. It had been transformed. Most everything that had been in there last week was gone, replaced by hundreds of baby trees, each about a foot high. We marched through them to the far end. The desk was still there, but now it had a big aluminum coffee urn sitting on it, with styrofoam cups, creamer, and sugar spread out around it. I picked up the phone and called Mom. I said, "I tried to call before. Were you out at the storage bin?" She didn't sound too happy. She said, "Yes, I was." "Did you need Eric's key?" "No. I filled out a form and the manager let me in." Uh-huh. Mom didn't say anything else. Was she angry at me? Or is she gonna come and drag me home? I changed the subject. "So what's happening there?" She paused a moment as if thinking the whole thing over. Then she changed gears and answered conversationally. "Your father bought a case of those fake logs. He's gonna get the fireplace going, and we're gonna break out the Christmas music." Uh-huh. "We'll probably make hot chocolate too. Too bad you're gonna miss it." "Yeah. Now, what's this thing with Paul? A sleepover party? Why didn't we have any notice about it?" "I wasn't invited until today." I half covered the mouthpiece and whispered, "I don't know. Maybe it was an afterthought." "You don't have a change of clothes. You don't have a toothbrush." "I'll use my finger." There was a long pause and then a long sigh. "Paul, I trust people. I trust them until I have a reason not to. Do you understand me?" "I understand." There was another long pause and some mumbling. "Your father says you have to be back here by 9 tomorrow morning. It's Eric's last game." "Okay, you can pick me up at 8 if you like." "I hope I can find that place." "Look for the sign that says Tomas Cruz Groves." The door at the far end of the hut burst open. Victor, dressed in black sneakers, pants, and hood like a cat burglar, walked in, followed by his boys. I said, "I have to go now, Mom. Enjoy your fireplace and all." She didn't say anything else, so I cradled the phone. Victor, Hernando, and Mano went right to a stack of shovels that were piled up next to the baby trees. Tino said to Henry, "Should have been here last night. We must have hauled a ton of dirt from the old grove to the Golden Dawns." He pointed to the stack and said, "Grab a shovel." Then he held up his Kmart bag. "Check it out." Tino dumped out a pile of thick black work gloves into the desk. Everybody grabbed a pair and pulled them on. Tina was smiling. "I bought 20 pairs of these gloves for you boys with delicate hands." Victor said, "Yeah, I'll mess up your face with some delicate hands." Tina said, "My daddy and my Uncle Charlie are out in the Cleopatra Grove, starting the fire. They're going to call us out to haul tires and brush. Louise is going to stay in the new grove and run the pumps. He's going to call us to chop ice off the trees." He smiled at Victor. "In our spare time, we're going to do what we did last night. We're going to keep the Golden Dawns packed with dirt." Then Tino extended one gloved hand toward us and held it there, just like Victor did before each soccer game. We crowded in and put our hands on top of his. He said, "You know what's up. Time and temperature. Louise says it's going to be 10 hours of hard freeze tonight. Trees are going to die no matter what we do. We got to save what we can." Victor said calmly, "Let's do it." And the circle broke up. We filed outside with our shovels into the cold sting of the wind. The sun was dropping in the sky. The temperature was dropping too. We headed into the old grove of trees, now bare of fruit, the grove of the Cleopatra tangerines. Their leaves seemed to be withering, shriveling. We walked through the sights and smells of last night's battle to a high point of land. Tino gestured in a slow circle. "Check this out." The trees in this spot were tall, weathered, and cracked. Haunted house trees. Louise says to use these to keep the brush fire going. Daddy and Tio Carlos will do the chopping, and we'll do the hauling. Tino looked at Henry D. "These trees are all dead. We call them the lightning trees. They're at the highest point in the grove, so they get zapped by lightning. They've been dead for years. We don't chop them down, though, 'cause they act like lightning rods. I hope we'll get away with just chopping down one or two for the fire tonight." Tino started downhill, and we followed. Henry pointed out a line of metal contraptions that were about 4 feet high. Each had a wide, round base and a narrow stovepipe sticking up from it. "Those are the smudge pots. Where do you see them when they're burning? Fire comes shooting out of the tops of them." He called out, "Tina, we gonna be hauling the diesel for these smudge pots?" "Ain't nobody else gonna do it." Tino turned at the end of the row and stopped. He pointed out a skinny, three-sided wooden box about 5 feet tall. Henry and I looked inside. It was a glass thermometer attached to a white metal plate that had Pepsi written across it. The temperature read 35 degrees. You'll see these at different spots, high spots and low spots inside the groves. I call Louise with the temperatures, and he calculates what we have to do and how much time we have to do it in, time and temperature. As we approached the lowest point in the grove, the trees began to look scorched. They smelled like smoke and rubber. We reached a clearing that had obviously been the site of a fire the night before. Tomas Cruz and his brother were placing dead branches in a crisscross pattern, laying the foundation for tonight's fire. A revolting smell of burnt rubber seeped up from the debris. Tino poked at his uncle as he passed by. ¿Qué pasa, tío? Si sabes, he replied. We emerged from the old grove into the wide square field of the Golden Dawn tangerines. How different this field looked now. Tino and his crew had dumped 1,000 small mounds of dirt in here. Like 1,000 giant anthills, they covered up all of those black irrigation hoses. Each little tree was now packed with dirt about a foot high, with a few green leaves sticking out at the top. Tino spoke again to Henry. We have to make sure that these trees are packed above the bud union right here. He pointed to a spot halfway up one of the dirt mounds. If we don't, the golden dawns are dead, and we got ourselves 1,000 rough lemon trees. He paused for emphasis. That can't happen. We continued along the back of the square field until we entered the new grove. There were twice as many tall, skinny sprinklers as last time. In the distance, I could see that one part of the grove was already being watered by them from high above. We walked toward the sound of a diesel pump until we came to a rickety corrugated iron shed, kind of a lean-to that was open on one side. Louise was inside it, looking at the dials on a pump and making notes. We formed a group around him, and he said, "Tonight's the night, homeboys. All over this town, all over this part of the state, people are going to be hurt by this freeze. It's a killer. It's going to kill right down to the wood, right down to the ground." He looked up at us. Actually, he looked up at me. He said, "You understand the plan, right? We're icing the new grove. We're packing the golden dawns. We're burning the old grove. What's alive in the morning is what's alive in the morning." He pointed at Victor. "Did you guys get some rest?" "Yeah, we crashed all day." "You ready for another night of this?" "Sure, you know we're always ready to rumble." "Yeah, I know that. Just be careful. All of you." Louise looked to the west, so we all turned to look with him. The sun was sinking low. The Cleopatra trees stood black in the orange light like Halloween cutouts. The temperature was dropping by the minute and the wind was whipping up. I thought about my phone call to Mom. In Lake Windsor Downs, the people were inside, welcoming the freeze with hot cocoa and fake logs and Christmas CDs. In Tangerine, the people were heading out to fight it with shovels and axes and burning tires. That turned out to be our last moment of peace. For the next 12 hours, we waged a fierce and increasingly desperate battle to save the Cruz family's trees. We began with the smudge pots in the old grove. 100 smudge pots had to be filled with fuel, fired up, and kept burning all night. We set out in pairs to do it. Henry and I were given 2 gas cans and a lighter, and we soon figured out what to do with them. The smudge pots were hellish machines, belching foul-smelling smoke and shooting a dangerous wild flame out the top, like upside-down rockets. We made hundreds of trips to the big orange diesel tank. Diesel generators pumped the water that Louise spread over the new grove. Diesel generators lit the new grove and the Golden Dawn field. Whenever we weren't responding to a crisis, we were hauling diesel. But there was one crisis right after another. The crisis might begin with a call from Tomas that the brush fire was going out. We'd take off on the run through the Cleopatra Grove, choking on the smoke, tripping in the dark. Tomas would be there, hacking apart a lightning tree, and we'd drag the dead limbs to the bonfire. Then we'd run back to the diesel tank. Soon, Louise would call, and we'd take off for the new grove. We'd use our shovels to scrape at trees that were getting too heavily coated with ice, trees that were about to crack. On it went like that, repacking dirt, hauling tires. We battled against the ever-dropping temperature, 30 degrees, 28 degrees, 26 degrees, but we were losing. The fire in the old grove was blazing high and wild, scorching the leaves off anything near it. By midnight, we had chopped down 4 lightning trees. The ice was forming too rapidly in the new grove. The coatings on the trees were too thick. The loud cracking sound of trees splitting off branches like amputated limbs, or splitting in two like they'd been poleaxed, hung horribly in the frozen night air. We were losing. For all of our frantic efforts, the temperature continued to drop. It must have been about 2 o'clock when I saw Tino and Victor standing in front of one of those Pepsi thermometers. Victor was screaming at it, 24 degrees, 24 degrees. It was like his frozen breath was spelling out the awful words. Tino got off the walkie talkie with Louise and announced, Louise says this: if it stays 24 degrees for 10 more minutes, then it's all over. He's calling it off. We're all going home. I stopped at my place in a row of golden dawns and I set down my can of diesel. One by one, I pried my black gloved fingers back, trying to straighten out my warped hand. For the first time that night, I felt the cold, and I felt exhaustion. I dropped to my knees on that frozen piece of earth, weary to the core of my body. I looked over to my left. The new grove was glistening like an angel on a Christmas tree, lit from within by the light of a diesel generator. Every tree dripped frozen icicles from the top down to the ground, and the glow of all of them together was more beautiful than anything I had ever seen. To my right, the smudge pots and that bloated bonfire were spewing out over every living thing. I saw Tomas and his brother emerge from the black and billowing smoke, marching toward Dino. I turned back and saw that Louise was coming down, too. They all met at the thermometer and talked for 5 minutes. Finally, Tomas and his brother broke away and marched back into the scorched grove. Louise said one more thing to Tino, then went back to his duties. I got back up on my feet as Tino called us to him. He announced, our daddy and Tio Carlos are going to keep trying. Louise says that the rest of us have to go inside, right now. He'll call me when we can come back out. We all trudged obediently over to the Quonset hut. I walked inside, felt the blessed heat, and collapsed on the floor. Victor picked me up into a sitting position. Then Teresa appeared in front of me with a cup of coffee. She said, do you like cream and sugar? I shook my head dumbly and said, I don't know. She smiled. Let's find out. I tried to take the cup from her, but my fingers wouldn't close around the handle. Teresa stooped down, held the cup up to my mouth, and I took a sip. It made me shiver. I took another one, and then another. Finally, I was able to hold the cup in my hands. Tina said, Fisherman, last time you were here, you collapsed because it was too hot. Now you're collapsing because it's too cold? What's up with you? Couldn't even think of a reply, much less make one. I sat there in a kind of coma for a long, long time. Finally, Tino's walkie-talkie crackled to life. I heard him say, all right, that's what we're waiting to hear. He turned to Victor. Louise says the new grove is holding steady at 29 degrees, and the high spots in the old grove are showing 28. He says that the worst is over. The temperatures are going back up. Victor and Tino clasped hands, but Victor was solemn. So, how much dead wood you got out there? I don't know, man. Anything in those low spots has had it. He turned to include me. Got too cold down there for too long. But hey, we're still in business. Tino, Victor, and the boys got up to go back out, so I struggled to get to my feet. Tino turned to Teresa. No way he's going back outside. Orders from Louise. Teresa pointed a stern finger at me. You heard that? Now don't move from here. I'm gonna go get you some blankets. I could barely move. I could barely speak. But suddenly Louise entered, and I knew I had to. He said, Paul, are you all right? I looked at him and tried to focus my eyes. I stared hard at his left temple. There it was. I could see it in this light. It was a dark red bruise, deep set like a birthmark. It curved over his eyebrow like a dark red crescent moon. I whispered, yeah. Tino said you were in bad shape. I was a little frozen. I'm okay now. Do you want to go to the hospital? No, no way. Feeling better already. He studied me doubtfully. I blurted out, listen, Louise. I only have a couple of minutes and I have to tell you something. I saw you at Lake Windsor High School. I saw what you did. Louise straightened up. I saw you face down Eric and those other guys, and I saw Arthur Bauer hit you with a blackjack. His hand moved automatically up to his temple. Is that what it was? Yes. And you have to believe me, Louise. They're dangerous. They're very dangerous. Louise, to my amazement, smiled. He was about to reply when the door at the far end opened and Teresa returned. He just said, I'll talk to you about this later. Teresa came up and handed me two thick green blankets and a white pillow. Louise went back out and I crashed. The next thing I knew, it was 6:30 and the crew was coming back in. Henry D said to me, the sun's coming up. We made it through the night. I pulled off the blankets and stood up, humiliated. But Tino came right up to me and said, "Hey, fisherman, thanks for helping us tonight." He held out his hand and I shook it. I said, "Tino, I'm really sorry about what happened." "What? Hey, man, you're not used to this kind of work." "No, not that. I mean in my house." Tino shook his head. "Oh, that. Well, we never should have gone over." "Yes, you should. You should go over there. You're my friends. Or I want you for my friends. You're welcome at my house." Tino nodded and then said, "You can be our friend over here, all right?" I shrugged and nodded. He added, "Our daddy's driving to the takeout for some egg McMuffins. You down with that?" "Okay." "Oh, and Louise says he wants to see you outside." "All right." I went out back and found Louise kneeling by a golden dawn tree with his face buried in the green leaves. I said, "Can you smell anything now?" He laughed. "Yes, I can." He sat back and looked at me. "I can smell what it will be like." "So the golden dawn survived?" "Oh, yeah, they all survived. They were the safest ones. When you're little like this, we can just cover you up with dirt. You'll be okay." He checked behind me and said, "I want to finish our conversation because I want you to know what's going to happen." "Okay." "You know those two black dudes who were there? One of them is Chandra's brother." "Yeah, Anthony Thomas." "Right. Well, Anthony and the other dude, the muscle man, don't care too much for Eric Fisher or his friend." I said, "Arthur Bauer." "Right. They told me to come back on Monday. We'd take care of business." "They said that all the players have to be there on Monday to turn their equipment in. Is that right?" "I don't know. That sounds about right." "I'm just telling you this so you'll know. You seem kind of scared of Eric and Arthur Bauer." "Yeah, I am. Who wouldn't be?" Louise answered simply. "I wouldn't be. They're punks." He pointed one rope-like finger at me. "And you shouldn't be either. You watch what happens on Monday. If Anthony keeps his word, two punks are going to have new attitudes right around 3 o'clock." Louise's uncle walked up and started talking to him. So I drifted back inside, thinking about my fear of Eric. How could I be so totally afraid, and Louise be not the slightest bit afraid of the exact same thing? Which one of us saw it wrong? Teresa brought out a 9-inch portable TV, and we all gathered around it to eat our egg McMuffins. The news people said that the cold front was now moving out of our area, but it had left a lot of damage behind, and it had put some area growers out of the business. They showed pictures of a grove that had been iced over. It was now dripping in the sun. Everyone in the hut watched in silence. After the news, Victor and his boys headed for home. I stood outside and waited for Mom. She pulled up right at 8 o'clock. Her first words were, "Did you stay up all night?" "No, I slept." "Paul, you look awful." "I slept, Mom, but I think I'm coming down with a cold." Mom reached over and put the back of her hand against my forehead. "Yeah, you and half the population of Lake Windsor Downs," she sighed. "Well, I'm not going to have you sitting in a freezing cold football stadium. You need bed rest." "You're right. I'd be better off at home." Mom thought for a minute and added, "Your father isn't going to like this." "I know, just tell him I need my sleep." Mom said again, "I will, but you had better sleep." "I will." "And I will, just like the rest of the crew. But first, I had to write this all down."